Okay, so here's part 4 of our little video series, and maybe this will be the last one. We'll see what we can do. What we've got here is our cropped version of the last file that we saved. And once you've done this with the students, if they're not happy with the way this goes, this cropped version, they can always undo it. Now, if I go to my tried and true undo, let's see what I've got up here. I'm going to go to edit. I can't undo this one. Why not? But I can step backwards. So I step backwards. You see that? It was edit and it was step backwards. And it's the shortcut key here. On a Mac, it is the Option key, the Command key, and the Z. I try to teach them at least a couple of keyboard shortcuts every day just because it gets to be pretty fast when they're working with keyboard shortcuts. On a PC, this would be the Alt key, the Control key, and the letter Z. Okay, so we're back to this particular composition, and if we wanted to crop it again, we could crop it again and save that as well. So if I had that clear ratio, remember that first time we did it end of the last video, clear up here, clear, nothing's in there. Well, that means that I can just click and drag and create a box here and then hit return. Now that is a different composition, and I could save that one out as well. I don't like this one, so I want to undo it. So I'm going to do that Option Command Z and step backwards. Alt Control Z on a PC steps backwards, or you can just find it up there, edit and step backwards. So I'm back to this one now. What I want to do is maybe put another shape in here. So I've got I've got a circle, I've got a rectangle, and maybe what we're going to talk to the students about is the difference between geometric and freeform shapes. So in my shape arsenal over here, I've got this custom shape tool, which is kind of funky. If I click on that, it gives me that little, what is that, Nickelodeon? What is that thing? And I'm going to come up here to the shapes at the top, and I'm going to click, and I've got all kinds of crazy shapes I can put in here. If you don't see all these shapes when you first open up Photoshop, this little gear, you click on it, and it will say to you, which shapes would you like? If you click all here, you got all kinds of different ones, but if you click all, it's going to give you a question, and it says, do you want to replace the current shapes with the shapes from all? You could append, meaning it would add it to the end of the list, but why append if you're going to show all the shapes? So I would just say OK, but in this case I already have all those shapes, so I'm just going to hit cancel. Alright, so here's our shapes. I need some kind of freeform shape. A freeform shape is something that can't really easily be measured. Outline of a tree, the outline of a person, this kind of stuff here. Grime, what is that? Kind of like that. Let's do something like that. We'll take this grimy circle right here. Good. Alright, so I've got that grimy circle, and now when I click and drag, it's going to give me this kind of grimy circle. Yeah, and I don't necessarily need it to be perfectly round. And I'm just going to let go. Now look what this did. What is this all about? This has all kinds of little lines around the outside edge. Little dots. These little dots represent points that you can move. It's like a path, you see it? And you can move that. You don't need to see that. So we're just going to click off of that onto any other tool, and there's my little grime thing. Okay. If I go back, notice the shape now has that outline, but it doesn't have all those little dots on it. All right, it's not a problem. So I've got the little grime shape at the top in my layers panel, and you could certainly change these around too. You can move them in different orders by clicking, holding, and dragging. Wait till it lights up, and then let go. Now this is underneath, and it's kind of hard to see there, but we can see it underneath this. Okay, so we've got our shape layers, moving them around, and maybe what I want to do with the grime one there is I'd like to change its color to give it a little bit something different. There we go. Now remember, I stayed in that same family, so these are still all related shapes. If I click on the background, now I've got this. I can move things around, create some different compositions, have some fun with this, talk to the kids about what's working, what's not working. A lot of times they're going to want to do a lot of really great color stuff. That's fine too. And you can even go back and do some stuff with color theory by saying, let's take one of these objects and change it to its complement. So the first thing I would do before I went and did that was I would save this one out. So I'd go File and Save As again. But this time, make sure you're going to give it a composition name here. So we're going to say Orange composition. And I definitely, in this case, want to save it as a Photoshop document. The difference is it's going to save all of those neat little layers over there that we can do something with later. So where do I want to put it? I'm going to put it in my JPEGs for class. I know it's not a JPEG, but that's where everything else was related to this. So I'm just going to say save. And it should save pretty quickly because it's such a small file. If this were a big file, and this might happen to you in your class, you'll see this little, there'll be like a time thing here, or a percentage thing, and it might take a long time for it to load, just especially if you're wireless. But anyway, here's our little design. Looks kind of nice. We've got a couple little shapes there. I could still move it around. I could do all kinds of different things with it. One of the things I'd ask the students to do after they got happy with this, if they wanted to change the color scheme stuff, they could go get one of the shapes, like I said, double click, and this time, if you want to do something that is the same value, in this case, value is the saturation and the brightness, right? Saturation is from the bottom to the top, from the left to the right, excuse me, and brightness is from the bottom to the top. But if I just take the little slider and move it to something that is going to be opposite to this blue, to the orange here, maybe this bluish color here, maybe something like that, that's good. If I let go, I can see it happen on the fly. That's pretty cool. So I'm going to back this up, I'm going to say OK, and now I've got this complementary color scheme. Does it work? Maybe, maybe not. If you want to undo it, Command Z will undo it. Okay, so the last part of this is we're going to do a little pattern. And let me just show you a little bit about the pattern stuff. And kids, you know, it's really good to teach students about pattern and how they're going to use it in their compositions. In this case, we're going to create a pattern, and then maybe what we'll do is we'll fill the background with a pattern, and so we can have this design be on top. All right, what do we have for a pattern? Well, the way to make a pattern inside Photoshop is you're going to go to the word Edit, and you're going to actually come down about 2/3 of the way down here and say Define Pattern. You can even create a brush, you can create a custom shapes, all kinds of fun stuff. And if you go onto lynda.com, you'll be able to find all of these great movies on there. So, define pattern, if I say OK to that, the whole entire composition comes up. And that will be the pattern that gets used. Let's say OK. Well, that's OK. But if I go ahead and fill this composition with that pattern, it'll fill the whole entire thing. So maybe I don't want to fill the whole composition. What I'll do is click on the layer 1 here, and I'm going to use a little, whoops, hello there, I'm going to use a little layer style. This thing, FX down here, is called Add a Layer Style, and it gives you a little drop-down list, and I want that pattern overlay to go on top of this. And I'm going to choose the pattern I just made. So I say Pattern Overlay, and it comes up with this little dialog. Oh, the default, by the way, is this bubbles. I don't know why. It's kind of crazy. Kids love it or hate it, whatever. Here's the pattern. Click that little list. I've got all kinds of patterns I've made and added and all kinds of things, and you could do that again with the gear here. Add some different patterns. But the pattern I just made is always going to be the last one in the list. So if I click on that, it doesn't look like it did anything in my composition. That's because the pattern is the same size as the composition. What I need to do is I need to change its scale. So if I take the scale now, again, talk about scale, talk about different ways patterns work, etc. I'm going to move this back and forth. Look at this. I've got the pattern of the entire composition in the background of the composition. That's pretty slick. I kind of like that. If I wanted to change it so that the pattern didn't stand out as much as it does here, but maybe it's going to be a little bit more subdued, I can change the opacity of that and see through it to the gradient that was underneath. That's kind of nice. Or I can even change this, the blend mode right here, and choose something that will make it do something different, like multiply will darken it a little bit. Interesting. So there's all kinds of fun ways to play with this. What I think you need to do with your students is to introduce pieces slowly, add a couple pieces at a time, talk about composition and color, talk about pattern, and create some fun little exercises that you can use all the time.